Starting the show today with an American testifying in the House yesterday about Biden's Afghan pullout. Take a listen.
When Joe Biden, our elected president, entered the room, when he approached me, his words to me were, my wife Jill and I know how you feel. We lost our son as well and brought him home in a flag-draped coffin. My heart started beating faster, and I started shaking, knowing that their son died from cancer and they were able to be by his side.
All right, folks, we're going to hear a little bit more of that, but I mainly wanted to open the show with that because, frankly, I don't have a lot of other bits, audio, and that's as good as any, I suppose. As you know, I've got court today at 2, so I am able to do the podcast. It's going to have to be a lot shorter. Don't worry, the I Feel Cheated crowd, don't need to get warmed up in the bullpen there. I'm going to cover everything. I think I can do it in 20 minutes or less. We shall see. Anyway, folks, that is right there, the GOP, the Republican House, making a big mistake. And we're going to talk about a lot today. I'm going to get a great chance to criticize the GOP today, which is good because it'll further solidify my moderate, middle-of-the-road bona fides, which I am. But anyway, here's why I think basically they shouldn't have done this. 2 reasons. One, she's going to talk a lot about her experience and how she feels. But there's a bigger point here that, again, the reason that's a problem is you're playing their game. The game we need to play is rational, logical, reasonable. I'm okay with feelings. I'm okay with bringing in empathy and all that emotion. All that has its place, but it can't dominate. And this was pretty much all it was. But there's one other glaring problem here that I just don't know why they would fall into this. But anyway, let her continue, because then I can make the point that I wanted to make and why I reject this type of things. Not just for the reason I just said, because it's playing emotional politics, right? You want to criticize him about Afghanistan and the politics of it and the pullout. I got no problem. Couldn't agree more. And think it's perfectly valid to have a hearing about that. But not about how these people felt, and especially not about their interactions, because there's a glaring hole. You can drive a Mack truck through this hole. Anyway, let her finish the point, and then I'll make the second point, and we'll get on to some other news that, frankly, I think is a lot more important.
Also wondering how someone could honestly, be so heartless to say he knew how I felt a little over 24 hours and learning of my son's death. After this encounter, I have never had any personal correspondence, nor has my son been honored or his name spoken by this commander-in-chief.
All right, so she goes on, and they had another 5 or 6 of them, and they all kind of told the same story. He did this bad thing, and he was very awkward when he came in the room. What's the glaring problem there? Not one, you're now saying to your people and to the independents, I mean, the Democrats are gone. They don't ever follow rational logic, reason anymore. It's all done. They can't, because if they did, they couldn't do half the things I'm going to talk about today. And we're going to hear a lot about January 6th. Not the January 6th you're thinking about. We're going to talk a lot about January 6th. And the only way they can continue this crusade and this fascism is if it's all emotional and how I feel and how I feel. I don't have to face an argument, right? So that's the first problem. Here's the biggest problem. And again, I believe in being fair. I think Joe Biden either has dementia or some other mental disability. Don't know what it is. I'm not a doctor, but I can look at the guy and tell you he ain't all there. I don't know if they're getting him on uppers. I can get through the day. There's obviously some problems. So then you come to me and say, yeah, he came to the hospital room and he got his son mixed up and said his son was in this, and he keeps saying that. And then there's this one soldier that I think described yesterday, well, I came in and he looked to shake my hand and he couldn't find a hand because I'd been blown off. And it's like, wait a minute, you just told me the guy has dementia. Yeah. So he came in and he acted awkward. I would assume a dementia patient would do that. Well, that doesn't excuse it. I didn't say it did, but you can't have it both ways. You can't say he's mentally deficient and then describe things that a person who was mentally deficient did. You got to pick a lane. Now I'm picking the lane of, he's not all there. And that's bad enough and a reason not to have him be our president, but you can't then blame him for being awkward. Now, do I think at the end of the day, it's probably both, right? In other words, when he was in prime health, back when he was running the Senate Judiciary Committee and he was about my age, I think he would have been awkward then too. I think he's a despicable human being. I've told you story after story after story. I think part of the reason he got a rise in politics is the Democrat Party looked around and said, who we got out here lacks compunction, will do anything. And they started going to that crowd. And we're going to talk about Lawrence Tribe later. They have no guardrails. They have nobody that pushes back and says, that's too far. They don't have that anymore. And Biden was one of the architects of that, believe me. And I use the term architect advisedly. But you got to pick a lane, folks. And it's bad in every way, but mainly it's not right. It's not fair. Here's another one where I think we're getting it wrong. And by we, I mean people who generally come from my persuasion, although very few people did. I'm a constitutionalist. I have more in common with Dershowitz and Matt Taibbi and all these people that vote Democrat than people who listen to me oftentimes think. But anyway, so here's the headline out there. Andy Ngo, he got assaulted, he got battered. He sued the two people that assaulted and battered him for the assault, the battery, and for influential infliction of emotional distress, I believe. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Here's the headline out there. Portland jury finds Antifa militants not liable in Andy Ngo attack. Defense attorney declares, I am Antifa. Now, folks, the headline is you can't get justice in Portland. That may be true. That may be true. I don't know the answer to that. There's a lot of talk about here about doxing. If anybody doxed the jurors, they should have been sanctioned. So that goes to the point that you can't get justice in Portland because, one, people will come in and, again, they lack compunction. They go over the line. They do things they shouldn't do. But I want you to read this story. And, again, this is one of the few times I will go to the right. This is the post-millennial, but we got to go to the right for me to debunk the right because they need to be debunked here. I read this story myself. I read it first thing in the morning. And this is post-millennial is Poso's group. Anyway, I recommend Poso's a good follow, but he's just wrong on this one, I think. Jury has reached a verdict in the trial of the investigative journalist Andy Ngo versus Rose City Antifa and its alleged affiliated members, in which they found both defendants, John Colin Hacker, Elizabeth Renee Reicher, not liable in the case brought against him. No filed a complaint in Oregon. Apparently in 2020, he was attacked, etc., etc. Defendant Hacker and Richter, who allegedly work as Antifa doxers, right, which after identifying Ngo had led a series of physical beatings on May 28th of 2021, were found by the jury on Tuesday not liable for all these crimes. Evidence provided during the trial, along with testimony by both defendants, asserts Ngo's claims in the complaint. Now, apparently, they admitted to pointing him out, and I think they also admitted to actually taking some part in the assault. So you would think it would be a slam dunk, right? Anyway, during closing statements, defense lawyer Michelle Burrows, now this is the one who declared I am Antifa and threatened the jurors, told the jurors that not only does she self-identify as both a progressive and an anti-fascist, she strongly declared, quote, I am Antifa, and insisted upon making herself an I am Antifa t-shirt, which she said she would wear after the trial. Despite Antifa's significant recorded history of violence, she told the jury that Antifa's unfavorable reputation is untrue and depicted the organized militant group as activists fighting for social justice and civil rights. Now, folks, let me just tell you something as a trial lawyer, and I'm not saying juries in Portland are fair. I think this may be an indication that they're not fair and they engaged in what's called jury nullification. But let me tell you, when I see an excellent trial lawyer, I'm going to call it out. That's an excellent trial lawyer. To the Posos of the world, who I don't think he may be a lawyer, it doesn't matter, but even if he is, he doesn't get what happened to him or whoever it is that was there. They had no idea when this was happening. When I would have literally been like, wow, that's brilliant. I can't believe they're going to pull that card. And that's what trial law is. Right? They come, you got to hit the ball in your court, you got to hit back in their court. And sometimes they'll hit it in places you never thought they would get there. But that's what a good trial lawyer is. This is smart. This is basically going after the whole theory here. And let me tell you what she's doing here. Brilliantly doing it. She's giving them an excuse. Because jury notification, jurors want to follow the law and they want to do what's justice. So she could have got up there and said, and she didn't, right? She could have got in there and said, I am Antifa. You should let these people off. Antifa's great. She didn't do that. She said it's an unfavorable reputation is untrue and depicted the organization as activists fighting for social justice. That's brilliant. It's like, hey, they didn't do any of this. And anyway, and again, these people, if you read this article, and we're going to go through a lot of it, they have no clue what happened to them. Zip. I mean, literally, the person is pulled up, robbed them, gone with all their stuff, and they still don't even know it's gone yet. Like you see that occasionally when they have these movies with these bank robberies. And that's part of the grift is that they rob you, and by the time you figure out you've been robbed, it's too late. Well, that's exactly what happened here. However, as she argued before the jurors, Ms. Burrows admitted that the black-clad people that had physically beaten Ngo were in fact terrorists. Number two, brilliant move. Hey, they're not us. No, we don't. Those people. No. Antifa's a totally different thing. I'm Antifa. And Antifa has an undeserved reputation because of these other people. Give them somebody else to blame. Classic. classically good trial lawyer technique there. Now, I'm not saying it's honorable, folks, but that's not her job. Anyway, the defense attorney went on to say that journalist Andy Ngo has dirty hands. Now, again, brilliant. And the idea here is equity. So in equity, I've talked about it before many, many times on the show, but since we rebooted, a lot of people have joined in different, because I'm now doing it basically in four different places. But anyway, so there's a whole idea of the court of law, which has to strictly follow the law. And in England, and also in American common law, there's this other court. Well, we can't help you because we got to follow these strict rules. But there's this equitable court. They may be able to help you. Well, so there's looser rules there. So the idea in equity is to kind of do justice. But here's a problem you have. One of the things, if you go to the equitable courts, you have to come with so-called clean hands. So that's where she's talking about dirty hands. What she really meant was unclean, but she dumbed it down for the jurors because they probably don't know the term. Anyway, so she's again, this is brilliant. It's going, hey, yeah, equity would suggest we give something for you, but you don't have clean hands. Yeah, you kind of got to be innocent to come and get this relief. She indicated that Ngo was a doxer, accused them of that which you accuse them of. Again, brilliant as well, because he uploads publicly available mugshots of Antifa-affiliated individuals that have committed crimes on his Twitter account, which has over 1 million followers. Okay. Anyway, she goes on. I gotta quince this because I gotta be at court at 2:00, and it's already 11:15 around there. So anyway, folks, whatever you're gonna hear, you're probably wherever you get your news, you're hearing a lot about this. And I mean this wholeheartedly. It could mean, and it probably does mean, that Portland's gone, you can't get a fair jury, it's D.C., it's New York, all these places. That could be. But I'm telling you, reading this was my honest opinion. I wanted to pass it along because, again, we look at the news through the lens of the law, history, and the Constitution. You need all three of them to figure this out. It could also just be a case of a decent jury wanting to do the right thing, but that they got outlawyered. I'm just sorry to say that, but it's true. And I feel that bad if that's what happened to Andy Ngo, because you really shouldn't have that happen. But then again, that's part of the reason you try to hire take two. Part of the reason you try to hire good lawyers. All right, now let's get to January 6th. I got a bombshell for you, folks. Bombshell. Okay, I talk about Lawrence Tribe all the time. I've been talking about January 6th all the time. January 6th for the Democrats right now is the gift that just keeps on giving. They are going to ride this like a steer down Peachtree. They're going to ride it. I mean, as hard as Bum Phillips used to ride Earl Campbell. I mean, they're just not going to let go of this. And I hate to say it, but it's working for them, and it's working for them in a lot of ways, right? But in order to be able to do it, you have to gaslight. And I'm going to get to Lawrence Tribe in about 5 minutes. But I want you to understand, I had no idea about this till this morning. The reason I found out about what Lawrence Tribe did, he's one of the original architects of what Trump did tried to do on January 6, 2021. Had no clue he was one of the architects. You know how I found out he's one of the architects? I was reading last night when I went to bed around 9:30, flipping through my Twitter, and Tribe got praised for an article where he criticized Cheesebro. Cheesebro has been revealed to be one of the architects of the January 6th strategy to challenge Biden's certification. You know where he got that idea from? Lawrence frickin' Tribe, when he talked about the post-Bush v. Gore around 2003. I mean, busted red-handed, and he tries to gaslight his way out of it. We're not going to let him do that. But again, they're getting away with that because of the gaslighting. But the first thing about January 6th I want you to understand is how it's the gift that keeps on giving. Now, they've given up the Section 3, 14th Amendment Section 3, you can't run for office if you are engaged in insurrection. That's one of the first reasons they started with, hey, if you engage in insurrection according to 14th Amendment Section 3, you can't run for office. That didn't go anywhere. But again, the Democrats know how to play today's politics. And again, it doesn't hurt that you control the referees. I mean, that helps. But they still are much, much better at politics than Republicans are. So they've morphed it into, well, it's an insurrection. We're going to have a January 6th committee, right? We're going to impeach the president. We're going to prosecute the president. We're going to, I'm going to get to a story in a minute. We're going to put about 1,200 people in jail for nothing. I mean, it's like, and I don't want to steal ideas. I heard this on Scott Adams, the Dilbert Creators podcast a couple days ago, but, he's sitting there talking about, how does anybody believe this garbage? I mean, apparently, if you want to take over a country, you just hire a couple of hundred people with zip ties and a Viking hat to wander through the Capitol. And all of a sudden, you've taken over the country. It's complete idiocy, but it's working. And so they use it everywhere they can. It's all throughout their environment. Here is Wolf Blitzer talking to And one other point I wanted to make about that. They also are using it to divide the Republicans. Don't ever forget this. So Pence is out there running for president. Well, one of the things they're doing is they're using January 6th to put a wedge between Pence and Trump, which is to say this: even if you don't like Trump and you like Pence or vice versa, right? Having Pence attack Trump and say he tried to overturn the Constitution isn't good for anybody. What does that do? Right? There's two ways to win in politics. One is to get your people out. Two is to suppress other people. For your party, the easier of the two is to do the opposite. In other words, if you're Trump, it's easier to get your people out and to suppress the Democrats from coming out, right? Same thing for Biden. It's easier for to hit people out and then say, oh, those people that were going to vote for Trump, man, just don't show up. You ain't got to vote for me. Don't you worry about that at all. Just don't go show up for Trump. How do you do that? Exactly what he's about to do here. Now, here's one staffer from Mike Pence attacking another staffer from Mike Pence on CNN. What do you think this is designed to do? Keep Trump people at home. Keep Pence people at home.
I want you to also listen to what retired General Keith Kellogg, as you know, he served as Pence's national security advisor, just put out in a statement. Let me read a couple sentences from the statement. You know him well, Keith Kellogg. Pence has often chosen the passive route, avoiding confrontation. This lack of assertiveness, combined with an over-reliance on failed political consultants like Mark Short, has demonstrated a laissez-faire leadership style unworthy of the presidency. What's your reaction?
Okay, so here is, just so you understand where we are, this is Pence, former, I think he was a national security advisor for Pence, Keith Kellogg, basically attacking Pence today, saying, hey, he's unworthy of the presidency, right? And and you just heard him read the statement. In the statement, he attacks both Pence and Mark Short. So what does CNN do? Let me come on and bring somebody who couldn't be more conflicted, because he's talking about you in the flipping tweet, Mark Short. What do you have to say, Mark Short, about somebody who just attacked you in public and has bad things to say? Let's figure out what you have to say about that, as if that's news. But there's a bigger point to this. Take a listen.
To Kellogg.
Well, Wolf, it's saddened to read that. I don't want to denigrate anybody who has served our country in uniform in combat like Keith has. But at the same time, I think Keith has just recently boasted that he nominated Mike Pence for the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which I don't think is consistent with his comments of him lacking leadership skills. I also know there were a lot of young men and women on our staff who stood at their posts on January 6th. Unfortunately, Keith... All right,
now, the first attack I think is fair, although it doesn't really lead anywhere. It's kind of a throwaway. It could go both ways, right? Just because I recommended you for something 2 years ago doesn't mean I still think you should do it. Or just because I think you're a great leader doesn't mean you should be the president. I mean, I could go all day with this. But then, boom, he pivots quick. Well, let me just reach into the bag of what do we have now? January 6th. It's just like the New Deal. We got Social Security. We got Medicare. We got 40-hour work week. We did all that. Well, you did it like 100 years ago. I'm not really sure why that's helping you now, but whatever. Now they've added January 6th. It's just another arrow in the quiver. But listen to what he has to say.
One of them. Keith was at the rally at the time that the United States Secret Service evacuated the vice president. The vice president's national security advisor was down on the rally encouraging people to march on the Capitol. So he did not stand his post. And
anyway, folks, he's going to talk now about good on receipts. I got to move on. Anyway, you get the point. All right, folks, here's Scott McFarland. Again, I say this all the time. He's with one of the Alphabet Network, CBS, a news congressional correspondent. This is a so-called reporter. I'm going to read the tweet, which I read also last night in preparation for the show. Nearly 1,100 January 6 defendants as of today, which would be yesterday. More arrests expected, more trials expected. Biggest criminal prosecution in U.S. history. Just astounding. Feel like you're getting honest news from that person who thinks it's astounding that they had the most political, or the most, actually, I didn't misspeak. It is a political persecution, but whatever. The most criminal prosecutions in U.S. history. Think of anything else out there that, maybe ought to have more. Maybe like the Civil War, maybe about, the revolution. Anyway, it's just, folks, I don't know what to tell you other than I just want you to know it's out there. All right. So, anyway, so this is the headline in the New York Crimes. They have now busted. Apparently, the January 6th committee didn't get it, or more likely they did get it, and they feloniously gave it to Jack Smith. But anyway, what's happened is now there's a new memo. They had the Eastman memo, which was the architect of the January 6th. Remember I told you Ted Cruz gets up, and he has all the people in the House, and they're going to elect, and they're going to run the Green Bay sweep. We've talked about it for weeks now. All right. That's what happened. Well, apparently they've now found an earlier memo that Cheesebro did. All right, it's another character I think he's one of the co-conspirators. Anyway, I recognize that what I suggest is a bold, controversial strategy, Mr. Cheesebro wrote, describing the fake elector screen. They're not fake, they're alternate, whatever. I, too, have a bold, controversial strategy for taking other people's money out of the bank through the use of masks and guns. Now, folks, that's somebody tweeting the New York Crimes story. So then you go to the New York Crimes story. And again, notice, this is just pure gaslighting, okay? I have a bold, controversial strategy for taking people out of the money of the banks using masks and guns. That's not part of the Cheesebro memo. The Cheesebro memo says, I recognize that it's bold and controversial. Okay, I don't have a problem with that. It is bold and controversial to go try to keep somebody from being certified and toss the election to the House. It is bold, and it is controversial. It's both. But that's fine. But then you add this, and again, notice this is just pure gaslighting. And I don't think people understand what gaslighting is. If, for example, I'm sitting and my girlfriend has a text come across, and it's from some guy, and it has a nude picture, and clearly they've done something nefarious. And I sit there and go, it's one thing for her to say, oh, no, that wouldn't meant for me. That's somebody else's phone. That's just a plain lie, right? Let me tell you what gaslighting is. Gaslighting is, Male, your aunt did die of dementia, and, you just turned 55. There was no text. Nothing came across here. Maybe you need to go to the doctor. Right? In other words, you're not just lying to cover up for something. You're actually trying to convince me there's something physically wrong with me. That's what gaslighting is. It goes back to the play or movie, can't remember which it was, doesn't matter. I think it was a play. Anyway, the husband kept turning down the gas, which was the light that that his wife saw by. They all saw by. That's why they did. They had gas lights back then. And when she complained, like, there's not enough light, he goes, oh, no, the light's fine. Something's wrong with you. That's what gaslighting is. So bold, controversial strategy for they didn't use masks, they didn't use guns. Anyway, you refer to the New York Times, and they talk about this. Here the point is, this whole new Cheesebro memo that we've talked about. Then you get to this fossil Judge Luddick, who they always come out, conservative jurist Luddick, who's nothing but. Anyway, only Professor Lawrence Tribe could write the stunning and incriminating dissection of Kenneth Cheesebro's critical memorandum in support of the plan to overturn the 2020 presidential election. It was not a plan to overturn. It was a plan to challenge for fraud. Anyway, so he then quotes Lawrence Tribe's recent article, Anatomy of a Fraud, Kenneth Cheesebro's misrepresentation of my scholarship in his efforts to again overturn the 2020 election. I tell you all that to tell you this. If you click on so what he's saying is Cheesebro attributes part of the way he came up with this plan, right? Not just what the Great American Mail tells you, right? The election of 1800, the election of 1876, and the others where we sent alternate electors many times by Democrats. No, not just that. Lawrence Tribe pointed this out back in 2003. So Tribe, again, gaslights. He's not just lying, he's gaslighting, right? He's lying and he's making you feel like there's something wrong with you, Cheesebro, because I didn't say that. Anatomy of a Fraud. Okay, he's misrepresenting my scholarship. Well, I clicked on the scholarship. I'm not going to lie to you. I did not have time to read the entire article. But here's the abstract that Tribe says Cheesebro is taking out of context. Part 5 of the article, this is the abstract again, shows that the Bush challenge to the recount presented a political question for resolution by Congress rather than a justiciable question for an Article III court. Let me break that down for you. When Bush v. Gore went up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said 7-2, what they're doing is violating the law. They can't keep doing it, which is they were changing the rules. You'd have one county, they'd have a rule, then the other county would have a different rule, and then some counties, again, this was back when we saw this kind of stuff, and we were like, what in the world? And they couldn't get away with it. There weren't enough Bidens then. There weren't enough Pelosi's then. There weren't enough Daniel Goldmans and Raskins back then, AOCs. There were a few, and they tried it, but they'd get pushed back by people going, nah, it's too far. Can't do that. No. But anyway, they were doing it. And you'd have one county, and they'd realize, wait a minute, Bush is getting a lot more, so we were going to change the way we're counting it. Literally the same day. Well, we were going to do it this way, but Gore wasn't getting enough, so we changed it. It's just crazy. Now, people always say it was 5-4. It was 5-4 to stop the counting. That's what it was. Now, again, arguably that is a little bit more controversial, but you got to understand they got liberal justices, right? And back then they were somewhere between liberal and leftist. They weren't quite leftist, but they were in between. But even a couple of them said, yeah, you can't do this. This isn't law. Now, of course, now you wouldn't get any of them. It would be 5-4 for both, but it's important to remember that. But here he is right here, cold busted. I mean, just cold busted. What he's saying is the Supreme Court had no business getting in on that. That's something that should have been kicked to Congress, right? And that's exactly what Cheesebro said. That's exactly what Eastman said. That's exactly what Trump said. That's exactly what the people in 1876 said, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Here's Lawrence Tribe basically saying it. Anyway, But they're going to, again, now that it's been dug up, they're going to try to hide it. All right, I'm going to skip this story. This had nothing to do with nothing. I'll do it tomorrow. It's just an Ari Melber point I was going to make about the left. So a couple things out there. Oh, so here's the thing about the GOP. I started the show today. I tweeted about it yesterday. The GOP is stuck in the 80s. I mean, they're still watching like Magnum PI or something. I don't know what they're thinking. Not that there was anything wrong with Magnum PI. I wasn't a fan myself, but it's a decent show. It's not my point. My point is, at some point, you have to realize the old ways have changed. We're not in the 80s anymore. And it struck me yesterday when I was thinking about it. I mean, the GOP, they came and they had the biggest of hopes, and they were like, we're going to win the game. We're going to get all these facts, and we're going to present you with all this evidence, and we're going to have these things called hearings, and we're going to bring these people in. And you know what? I mean, honestly, in January, February, I might even have been like, yeah, guys, okay. But let me tell you what I'm saying to these guys now. Guys, it doesn't matter. Facts don't matter. Witnesses don't matter. I mean, you got Jamie Raskin out there going, where is Biden's account with the wires coming in the money? And it's like, dude, I assume he's not a complete imbecile that he did that, but there's a lot. Oh, okay. So the point is, facts and evidence don't work, right? It worked in the 70s for the Watergate hearings. It doesn't work anymore. It's time to move on, people. But here we go. Representative James Comer, this is this morning, I believe. In fact, this morning at 9 a.m., I just released new Biden family bank records and outline how the Bidens received millions from oligarchs in Russia, Kazakhstan, and Ukraine, while Joe Biden was VP. Comer, I'm sorry, really. I mean, why don't you just grow a mustache and go back to the 80s, because it ain't working no more. Here's another one from Cernovich. McConnell cautions GOP on impeaching Biden. It's not good for the country. Again, I'm not trying to pick on the turtle. I'm really not. But Mitch, you just retire. I'm sorry, you got to go. I understand you got to wait and see if the Republican wins so you can retire and have another Republican appointed. But this is just idiocy at this point. I mean, the only thing you have is impeachment. They've already made it idiocy. They've changed the rules, and you still think they're playing by these different rules. They're not. Those rules expired a long time ago, and at this point, it's really frustrating to see the GOP. They don't even understand, and they've got 6-7 months now of this simply will not work. Nobody cares. No amount of evidence. No amount of evidence is going to do it. Move on. All right. So here's another thing I want you to know out there, which is important. I ran into this, and again, I got it right here. You're looking at the same tweet I did. An ambitious new project aims to recover the names of approximately 10 million women, men, and children of African descent who were enslaved in what became the United States. I mean, here's the point I want to make. It's a hoax. Number one, it's a hoax. Number two, it's down the road to reparations. Yes, reparations are coming. If they can just, with a stroke of a pen, try to forgive millions of loans for people that vote for them, of course they can do reparations. Now, how do I know that? I tell you all the time, folks. An excellent just tell in generality, and if you're negotiating, never do this. Don't use round numbers. I saw that and I thought, 10 million? That seems like a lot. That's a lot of slaves. And of course, I did. I'm not going to do it today. I might do it later in the week. Or this story is a developing story, so I'll get a chance to cover it again. But 10 million, it's a round number. It's nonsense. I read the article, and then he goes, oh, well, 10 million, and then those 10 million lived an average of 40 years, so now you got 10 times, so you got 400 years of labor and all this crap. Everything he does is a round number. And they generated, 50 billion in actual revenue, which in today's dollars would be 100 million. Not a chance, folks. Not a chance. And again, let me help this person. Well, I can't remember the name of the author. It doesn't matter. Whoever authored this study, let me tell you something, dude. Next time you do that, come up with 9,467,050. That might be believable, and it will send a signal. Yeah, we did a lot of research, a lot of effort in this. We got it down to this. And it could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less, but no. They just throw out 10 million. It's just a hoax, and it's all designed to now we're going to have names, and it's going to be, this is going to be the gift that keeps on giving us. 10 million people, 10 million, 10 million, 10 million. And they generated 50 billion of actual labor, which in today is 500 million or 500 trillion or whatever. Let me show you the name of this person. Let me show you the name of that person. I got 10 million people. So how many shows does that do? I don't know, but it's a bunch. All right. One other thing. Yeah, so this I saw yesterday, real quick. The Ohio thing looks like it didn't pass, and it didn't pass by a lot. I told you yesterday what they were up to there. I'm not going to take a position of whether or not you should be able to amend your Constitution with a mere 50%. And again, I just hadn't had a chance to research it. I would assume to get it to the people to vote on it for 50%, it would have to have more than 50% in the legislature, for example. I hadn't researched it, don't know, don't care. Here's the point. The main point was these things, these referendums and these votes, they're rigged. And they've rigged them by pulling in tons of money from outside. And another thing people don't realize, the Republicans are no longer the party of the rich. Don't believe me. Just go take a look. Go look at the biggest lobbyists and how much money. And you get down to the NRA, you're going to laugh at how ridiculously small they are. But anyway, here's the point I wanted you to make. All day when it came out, and I think it lost like 70-30 or 65-35, it was huge. When I saw the news that it was losing, you saw something like this. And this is Joe from Jurors, but whatever. She's what you're going to get. I love it when effing fascists lose. Now, let's just hold on. Whoa, what do you mean fascist? All I'm saying is, and rather than amend the Constitution, however it gets out of the legislature, you ought to be able to get 60, not 50. How's that fascism? Really? A lot of points here, but I want you to understand, everything's fascism. Hey, anything I don't agree with, fascism. Anything I don't like, fascism. And again, folks, this is where somebody would say, whoa, pump the brakes on the fascism, because we got some real fascism we need to deal with. Nope, can't be bothered. Here's another one from her. F your feelings, Republicans are going through some things right now. And Lordy, is it absolutely glorious to behold. Again, she's practicing fascism and then calling out other people as fascists. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, folks. Because again, hating your political opponents. I had another tweet that did make it into the show, and I'm glad it didn't because I'm already 30 minutes in. I'm gonna be 2 more minutes and I'll be done. But anyway, this is insidious, and these people are teaching people to hate other people. Not because they're doing something to other people or they're just generally bad people like pedophiles, etc. They're teaching people to hate people for their views. That's what that's all designed to do. And it's all because that's how she is. And she wants everybody else miserable like her. All right. Here's Ian Millhiser or whatever. And he, again, in reaction to Ohio. Because, again, what I think they want to do is somehow get a constitutional amendment through the legislature, which I don't think they're going to be able to do because Ohio is Republican. But if they ever take it back or get it, and I could be wrong about that, I haven't researched it, then they think, oh, we'll just flip it to the people and the people will vote 50%. I could go on about why I don't think 65% means that that's going to happen. But here's the point I want to make. I'm not saying that Sammy Alito's, again, notice how disrespectful, but whatever. Sammy Alito's decision in Dobbs is a world historic political blunder that will cripple his beloved Republican Party. But there sure is a lot of evidence building for that hypothesis. Point, very simple. It's all politics to them. I mean, I tweeted back at him at this. How could it be a political blunder when Alito's not a politician? It's all politics to the left, folks. Never forget that. That was actually the last slide. So we are done. You are officially all caught up with the news of the day, and I got to get to court. Don't worry, it's an easy hearing. I won it basically once the guy filed it and I responded, but I still got to show up. So anyway, if you enjoyed this podcast, I hope you tune back in tomorrow.